Jake Morrison adjusted his tie as he walked into the massive council chamber. The room was huge, with seats arranged in circles that went up to the ceiling. Hundreds of alien beings filled those seats, each one representing their homeworld in the galaxy. Some looked like giant insects, others had tentacles instead of arms, and many had features that Jake could not even describe. He took his place at the small human section near the bottom. The chair next to him was empty because Earth only had one representative in the entire Galactic Council. Jake had held this job for 5 years now, and every day felt like banging his head against a wall. The Zephyrian delegate stood up to speak. Zephyrians looked like tall, thin birds with blue feathers and sharp beaks. This one wore the golden robes that marked him as a senior council member. His name was something that sounded like clicking and whistling when he spoke his own language, but humans called him Minister Blue. The human request for expanded trade routes is denied, Minister Blue announced. His voice came through the translation device as cold and dismissive. Humans lack the experience and wisdom to handle such responsibilities. Jake stood up quickly. With respect, Minister, humans have been trading peacefully for over 200 years. We have never broken a single trade agreement or caused any conflicts. Laughter filled the chamber. Not human laughter, but the sounds that different alien species made when they found something funny. Some clicked, others made high-pitched squeals, and a few made rumbling sounds like distant thunder. Peaceful because you have no choice, Minister Blue replied. Your species has 12 ships. 12 tiny vessels in the entire galaxy. You are like children asking to play with adult tools. Jake sat down, his face red with anger. This happened every time he brought any proposal to the council. It did not matter if Earth wanted to build a new space station, open a trade route, or even just send a research team to study plants on an empty planet. The answer was always no. Meanwhile, far from the council station, Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the Terra Nova. Her ship was one of those 12 vessels that Minister Blue had mentioned. It was a good ship, built by human hands with human technology, but it looked primitive next to the alien vessels they sometimes encountered. Captain, we are approaching the Kepler system, said Lieutenant Ryan Clark from his position at the navigation console. Ryan was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and angry eyes. He had joined the space service hoping to explore new worlds, but instead spent most of his time filling out forms for the council. Take us to the 4th planet, Lisa ordered. Let us see what we found this time. The planet below them was beautiful. Blue oceans covered most of the surface, with green continents that looked perfect for human settlement. The air was breathable, the temperature was comfortable, and there were no signs of intelligent life. This would be perfect for a colony, Ryan said quietly. Earth is getting crowded and we could build a real settlement here. Lisa nodded, but she knew what would happen. They would file their report with the council, and within a month some other species would claim the planet. It had happened 3 times already this year. Humans found the worlds, but aliens got to keep them. Back on Earth, General Nathan Brooks sat in his underground office reading reports from across the galaxy. The walls were covered with star maps and photographs of alien ships. Nathan was 50 years old with gray hair and scars on his hands from his early days as a combat pilot. The reports all told the same story. Human merchants were being charged higher fees than anyone else. Human research teams were denied access to important discoveries. Human colonies were restricted to one small settlement on one distant world, while other species had hundreds of colonies each. Nathan pressed a button on his desk. Get me President Carter. A few minutes later, President Helen Carter appeared on his video screen. She was in her office in Washington looking tired. Helen had been president for 3 years and the stress was starting to show. What is it, Nathan? She asked. The same as always. The council denied our trade request, denied our colony application, and raised the fees for using their jump gates. They are choking us slowly. Helen rubbed her eyes. The people are getting angry. Congress wants to know why we keep accepting this treatment. Some of them are talking about pulling out of the council entirely. Maybe they should, Nathan said. Maybe it is time to stop asking for permission and start making our own choices. Helen looked at him carefully. Are you talking about Project Prometheus? Nathan nodded. For 15 years, while Earth was playing the role of a peaceful, weak species, they had been secretly building something else. Hidden shipyards in the asteroid belt, weapons research facilities on the dark side of the moon, training centers where Earth's best soldiers learned to fight in ways that would shock the galaxy. How long until we are ready? Helen asked. We are ready now, Nathan replied. We have been ready for 2 years. We are just waiting for the right moment. That moment came sooner than anyone expected. Dr. Amy Turner was working late in her laboratory when she made the discovery that changed everything. Amy was Earth's leading expert on alien biology, and she had been studying medical records from the Council for months. The files came from a Zephyrian ship that had crashed on Earth's moon. The aliens claimed it was an accident, but Amy suspected they had been spying on human settlements. What she found in their computers was much worse than spying. The Zephyrians had cures for diseases that killed millions of humans every year. Cancer, heart disease, genetic disorders that caused children to die young. The cures existed and they were not even difficult to make. The Council species had been using these treatments for centuries, but they had never shared them with humans. Not because they wanted to sell them, not because they were secret. They had simply decided that humans did not deserve them. Amy stared at the data on her screen. Her own brother had died of cancer 5 years ago. She had watched him suffer for months, becoming weaker every day, while somewhere in the galaxy there was a simple injection that could have saved his life. She reached for her phone and called General Brooks. When he answered, she could barely speak through her anger. General, you need to see this. You need to see what they have been hiding from us. Nathan arrived at her laboratory within an hour. After Amy showed him the medical files, he sat in silence for a long time. How many people have died because of this? He finally asked. Millions, Amy whispered. Maybe billions over the past 2 centuries. Nathan stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the lights of Earth cities full of people who had no idea that their friends and family members had died for no reason, except alien cruelty. Call President Carter, he said. Tell her that the waiting is over. It is time to show the galaxy what humans are really capable of. The peaceful chapter of human history was about to end. The galaxy had made its choice, and now Earth would make theirs. Ben Rodriguez was having breakfast with his daughter when the alarm started screaming. He dropped his coffee cup and ran to the window of their small apartment on Kepler 442b. What he saw in the sky made his blood freeze. 12 massive ships hung in the orange morning sky like dark clouds. They were Korath vessels, easily recognizable by their spike-covered hulls and red warning lights. The Korath were one of the most aggressive species in the galaxy, known for taking what they wanted by force. Ben was the colony administrator for New Haven, humanity's only settlement beyond Earth. 15,000 people lived here, working in the mines and farms that made this distant world their home. They had been here for 8 years, building a life among the red rocks and purple grass of this alien world. Dad, what are those ships? Asked his daughter Lucy. She was only 12 years old, born here on Kepler. This was the only home she had ever known. I do not know, sweetheart, Ben lied. He knew exactly what they were and why they were here. Go find your mother and stay inside. Ben ran to the communication center in the middle of town. The streets were full of confused and frightened people pointing at the sky. Some of the miners had stopped working and were staring up at the alien ships. Children cried while their parents tried to calm them down. Inside the communication center, Ben's assistant Maria was already at the radio, trying to contact Earth. I cannot get through, she said, her voice shaking. Something is blocking our signal. Ben pushed past her and turned on the emergency broadcast system. His voice echoed through speakers all over the colony. This is Administrator Rodriguez. All civilians report to the underground shelters immediately. This is not a drill. Move quickly, but do not panic. Before he could say anything else, a new voice filled the room. It was deep and harsh, speaking through the same speakers that Ben had just used. The words came through a translation device, but the anger was clear in any language. Humans of this world, the voice said. I am Fleet Admiral Thokmar of the Korath Empire. You are occupying a world that belongs to my people by ancient right. You have 1 hour to prepare for evacuation. Ben grabbed the microphone. This is Colony Administrator Rodriguez. We have legal settlement rights granted by the Galactic Council. We have been here for 8 years with full permission. The alien's laughter was like grinding metal. Your council papers mean nothing to me, human. This world was marked by Korath explorers 3,000 years ago. We are claiming what is ours. 3,000 years? Ben shouted into the microphone. You never mentioned this claim before. You never filed it with the council. You cannot just show up and demand our home. Watch me, Thokmar replied. The communication system went dead. Ben tried every frequency, but the aliens had cut off all contact with the outside galaxy. New Haven was alone. Captain Lisa Hayes was 3 days away when she received the emergency message from Earth. The Terra Nova had been exploring an empty star system when the priority signal came through. The message was short and terrible. Captain Hayes, proceed immediately to Kepler 442b. Korath forces have surrounded New Haven colony. Evacuate all civilians. Do not engage alien vessels. Repeat, do not engage. Lisa stared at the message on her screen. The Korath had 12 ships. She had one. Her vessel was designed for exploration, not fighting. The Terra Nova had some basic weapons, but nothing that could stand against a Korath battle fleet. Ryan, set course for Kepler. Maximum speed, she ordered. Lieutenant Ryan Clark's face was pale as he entered the navigation commands. Captain, it will take us 3 days to get there, even at full speed. Lisa nodded grimly. 3 days was too long. Anything could happen in 3 days. On the colony, those 3 days felt like 3 years. The Korath ships maintained their position in the sky, but they did not attack. They just waited, like vultures circling over dying prey. Ben organized the evacuation as best he could. The colonists packed what they could carry and moved to the landing fields where their transport ships were kept. But there were only 3 transport vessels, and they could not carry everyone at once. On the second day, a small Korath shuttle landed near the colony. Admiral Thokmar himself stepped out, surrounded by 6 heavily armed soldiers. The Korath looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs. They had thick green skin, yellow eyes, and mouths full of sharp teeth. Ben met them at the edge of town with a dozen human security officers. The humans were badly outnumbered and outgunned, but they stood their ground. Your time is almost up, human, Thokmar said. His voice was even more frightening in person than it had been over the radio. Where are your evacuation ships? One is coming, Ben replied. We need more time to get everyone off the planet. You have had enough time. My patience is ended. These are innocent people, Ben pleaded. Families with children. They built their lives here. Just give us a few more days. Thokmar made a sound that might have been laughter. Your weakness disgusts me. In 3 hours we begin mining operations. Anyone still on the surface will be considered hostile. The alien turned and walked back to his shuttle. Ben watched them leave, knowing that he had just received a death sentence for thousands of people. Captain Hayes arrived at Kepler just as the deadline expired. She brought the Terra Nova out of hyperspace to find the Korath fleet opening fire on the mining platforms where most of the colonists worked. Explosions lit up the planet's surface like deadly fireworks. Captain, I am reading massive casualties, reported Chief Medical Officer Dr. Tony Shaw from his console. At least 3,000 people were on those platforms. Lisa watched in horror as the alien ship systematically destroyed everything the colonists had built. Homes, schools, hospitals, and farms vanished in bursts of energy weapons. People ran screaming through the streets while Korath fighters strafed them from above. Ryan, can we get a message to Earth? Lisa asked. Yes, Captain. We are far enough from their jamming field. Send this message. Korath forces have begun systematic slaughter of New Haven colony, requesting immediate military assistance. Estimate 12,000 civilians still alive. Lisa paused, watching another explosion destroy the colony's main hospital. Add this, the Korath are not just claiming territory. They are committing genocide. The message reached Earth 6 hours later. In the council chambers, Ambassador Jake Morrison demanded an emergency session. When the delegates finally assembled, he stood before them with the images of New Haven's destruction playing on every screen. Honored delegates, Jake said, his voice shaking with rage. The Korath have just murdered 3,000 innocent civilians. They are continuing to kill families and children as I speak. I demand that the council take immediate action. Minister Blue barely looked at the images. The Korath claim is legitimate under ancient territorial law. If humans chose to settle on disputed territory, they accept the consequences. Disputed territory? Jake shouted. They never filed this claim. They never told anyone about it. They waited until people built homes and had children, then showed up with warships. The Altarian delegate, a creature that looked like a giant spider, clicked its approval. Primitive species often fail to research proper territorial claims. This is their own fault. Jake looked around the chamber at hundreds of alien faces. Some showed mild interest, others showed boredom, but none showed concern for the humans who were dying. Several delegates were actually making the sounds that meant amusement in their languages. You find this funny? Jake asked, his voice barely controlled. You find the murder of children amusing? Minister Blue stood up. What we find amusing, human, is your arrogance. Your species has existed in space for barely 2 centuries. We have been building civilization for thousands of years. You are insects that have forgotten your place. The chamber erupted in alien laughter. Clicks, squeals, and roars of approval filled the air. Jake stood alone in the center of it all, surrounded by creatures that saw his people as nothing more than pests. He walked slowly to his communication console and opened a direct channel to Earth. President Carter's face appeared on the screen. Along with General Brooks, Mr. President, Jake said quietly. Negotiation is over. They are laughing while our people die. They see us as insects. There is no reasoning with them. Helen Carter nodded slowly. Behind her, General Brooks was already reaching for his phone. Understood, Ambassador, the President said. Come home, Jake. It is time for Earth to have a different kind of conversation with the galaxy. Jake turned off the communicator and walked out of the chamber. The alien laughter followed him into the corridor, but he did not look back. That laughter would be remembered. Every click, every squeal, every sound of amusement at human suffering would be paid for. The galaxy had made its choice. Now Earth would make theirs. The silence began exactly 72 hours after Ambassador Morrison walked out of the council chamber. Every human ship in council space simply vanished from sensors at the same moment. The Terra Nova, along with 11 other exploration vessels, disappeared as if they had never existed. Admiral Vex Kalar of the Zephyrian Defense Fleet was the first to notice something was wrong. He was monitoring the human vessels from his command ship when they all went dark at once. No explosion, no distress signal, no emergency beacon. They were just gone. Communications officer, hail the human vessels, Vex Kalar ordered. No response, Admiral. All human ships have stopped transmitting. We cannot detect them on any frequency. Vex Kalar frowned with his bird-like features. Scan for debris. Check for hyperspace signatures. After several minutes, the sensor officer looked up from his console. Nothing, Admiral. No debris, no hyperspace trails. It is as if they simply ceased to exist. Similar reports came in from across the galaxy. Every human ship had vanished simultaneously. Even stranger, all communication with Earth had stopped completely. The human homeworld was still there, but it was not responding to any signals. Minister Blue called an emergency council session. The humans appear to have withdrawn from galactic civilization, he announced to the assembled delegates. Perhaps they have finally accepted their proper place. The Altarian delegate clicked in agreement. Good. Let them hide in their little corner of space. The galaxy is better without their constant complaints. But Dr. Korvash, the chief scientist of the Centauri Republic, was worried. Admiral, this is not normal behavior. Humans are curious by nature. They would not simply isolate themselves without explanation. You worry too much about insects, Minister Blue replied. Humans are weak and emotional. They are probably crying in their home system because we hurt their feelings. 3 months passed in complete silence from human space. The galaxy moved on. Business continued as usual. And most species forgot about the missing humans entirely. Trade routes were redistributed. Exploration assignments were given to other species. And Earth became nothing more than a footnote in galactic records. Then Captain Daniel Pierce arrived at Zephyr Prime. The massive human warship decloaked directly above the Zephyrian capital city, appearing out of nowhere like a nightmare made real. The vessel was unlike anything in council records. Where human ships had once been small and practical, this one was enormous. Dark metal covered its hull and strange weapons extended from every surface. Admiral Vex Kalar received the emergency alert while he was having lunch. He rushed to his command center to find his officers staring at their screens in confusion and fear. Admiral, there is a human vessel in orbit above our homeworld. His communications officer reported. It appeared without warning. Our sensors did not detect it approaching. Impossible. Humans do not have cloaking technology. Sir, they are transmitting a message. The main screen filled with the image of a human male. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing a black uniform that none of them had seen before. His eyes were cold and hard, like chips of ice. I am Captain Daniel Pierce of the United Earthship Retribution, the human said. His voice was calm and quiet, but something about it made every alien in the room nervous. You wanted to see humanity's place in the galaxy. Allow us to demonstrate. Admiral Vexcalar quickly ordered his home fleet to respond. 27 Zephyrian warships moved to intercept the human vessel. These were some of the most advanced ships in the galaxy, equipped with weapons that could destroy a small moon. The battle lasted exactly 18 minutes. The Retribution moved through the Zephyrian fleet like a shark through a school of fish. Its weapons cut through their shields as if they were made of paper. Energy beams that should have bounced harmlessly off alien armor instead sliced through hull metal, like it was soft butter. The Zephyrian ships fired everything they had. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, and fusion missiles all struck the human vessel. The weapons that could have destroyed entire cities barely scratched the Retribution's dark hull. Captain Pierce's ship danced between the alien vessels, moving faster than anything that size should have been able to move. Its weapons fired with surgical precision, disabling engines and weapons without destroying the ships entirely. The human captain was not trying to kill everyone. He was sending a message. When the battle ended, 26 Zephyrian ships were drifting helplessly in space. The 27th had escaped to carry word of what had happened. Admiral Vexcalar found himself floating in an escape pod, watching his entire fleet reduced to scrap metal. Captain Pierce's voice filled the communication channels one more time. "Tell your council what you have seen here. Tell them that humanity has finally decided to claim its proper place among the stars." The Retribution vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving behind only wreckage and terrified survivors. Meanwhile, Admiral Susan Grant was approaching the Korath homeworld with her ship, the UES Vengeance. The Korath, who had destroyed New Haven colony, were about to receive a personal visit from Earth's military. Susan was 55 years old and had been fighting aliens in secret, training simulations for 20 years. She had studied every Korath battle tactic, every weakness in their ship designs, and every detail of their military organization. She knew them better than they knew themselves. The Korath home fleet was much larger than the Zephyrian force. 68 ships surrounded their homeworld, including several massive battleships that could level continents. When the Vengeance appeared in their sensor range, they immediately moved to attack. Admiral Susan broadcast a message to every ship in the Korath fleet. "I am Admiral Susan Grant of the United Earth Navy. You murdered 3,000 innocent civilians on Kepler 442b. You laughed while children died. Today you learn the price of that laughter." The Korath response was exactly what she expected. "Pathetic human. You faced the entire Korath home fleet with one ship. Surrender now and we might let you live as our slave." "Counteroffer," Susan replied. "Surrender now and I might let your planet live." The Korath fleet opened fire with everything they had. The space around the Vengeance filled with energy beams, missiles, and plasma bursts. When the light faded, the human ship was completely undamaged. Susan smiled coldly. "My turn." The Vengeance moved into the Korath formation like a predator unleashed. Its weapons were different from those on the Retribution, designed specifically to counter Korath technology. Where the aliens expected energy shields, they found adaptive armor that grew stronger with each attack. Where they expected slow human reflexes, they found computer systems that could think faster than any living mind. The battle above the Korath homeworld lasted 4 hours, but only because Admiral Grant was being methodical. She disabled each ship carefully, making sure that every alien crew member understood exactly how outmatched they were. When the fighting ended, the Korath home fleet was nothing but debris floating around their planet. Admiral Grant's ship hung motionless above their capital city, completely undamaged despite facing odds of 68-1. "People of the Korath Empire," Susan broadcast to the planet below. "Your military is destroyed. Your fleet is gone. You have one choice: unconditional surrender, or your world shares the fate of your ships." The reply came within minutes. The same Admiral Thokmar who had murdered the colonists on Kepler spoke from the planet's surface. His voice was no longer arrogant and commanding. Now it shook with fear. "We surrender. Please do not destroy our world. We surrender completely." Back on Earth, Dr. Tony Shaw watched the battle reports from his command center deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. Tony had spent 30 years developing the weapons that made human victory possible. While the galaxy thought Earth was weak and primitive, he had been building the most advanced military technology in known space. "How many more ships are ready?" asked General Brooks, who was standing beside him. 247, Tony replied. Each one equipped with technologies that the Council species cannot even imagine. And the Council still thinks we are primitives? Tony smiled. They think we spent the last 2 centuries begging for scraps and building exploration ships. They have no idea that we were also reverse engineering their technology and developing countermeasures. The truth was more complex than even the aliens suspected. Humanity had indeed spent 2 centuries being humiliated and oppressed by the Council. But they had also spent those same 2 centuries learning. Every trade agreement gave them access to alien technology. Every diplomatic mission allowed them to study Council military capabilities. Dr. Amy Turner had played a crucial role in the deception. While she publicly studied alien biology, she had secretly been analyzing every piece of Council technology that Earth could acquire. She learned how their shields worked, how their weapons functioned, and most importantly, how to make them useless. The weapons on the Retribution and Vengeance were not just powerful. They were specifically designed to counter every known form of Council defense. The hulls of human ships were not just strong. They adapted to enemy weapons, becoming more resistant with each attack. The Council species have been fighting the same way for thousands of years, Amy explained to the assembled Earth leadership. They rely on... The emergency Council session was chaos. Delegates screamed at each other in dozens of languages, while translation devices struggled to keep up. The great chamber that had once been filled with smug confidence now echoed with panic and fear. Minister Blue stood at the center podium, his blue feathers ruffled with stress. Around him, representatives of 47 different species demanded answers that he did not have. "How many human ships are there?" shouted the Altarian delegate, his spider-like legs clicking nervously on the floor. "We do not know," Blue admitted. "Our intelligence networks have gone completely dark in human space. We have no idea what they have been building for the past 2 centuries. The Centauri representative, Dr. Korvash, projected a holographic star map above the chamber. Red dots marked every location where human ships had appeared. "Look at this pattern. They hit 47 systems simultaneously. That requires precise coordination and overwhelming numbers. Or very advanced technology," added the Rigelian ambassador, her crystalline form glowing with nervous energy. "These humans have capabilities we never imagined." Minister Blue tried to maintain order, but the chamber was falling apart. Some delegates demanded immediate retaliation against Earth. Others wanted to negotiate a peace treaty. A few were already talking about complete surrender. "Honored delegates," Blue called out, but no one was listening anymore. The chamber's main screen suddenly activated without anyone touching the controls. The alien delegates fell silent as a human face appeared before them. It was a woman with gray hair and stern eyes, wearing a military uniform covered with insignia they did not recognize. "I am Fleet Admiral Karen White of the United Earth Navy," the woman said. Her voice was calm and professional, but her eyes were like frozen steel. "You are probably wondering why your security systems could not prevent this transmission. The answer is simple. We control your technology better than you do." Minister Blue stepped forward. "Admiral White, I demand to know how many human vessels threaten Council space." Karen smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You want to know our numbers? Very well. 247 ships are currently in position around your most important worlds. Each one carries enough firepower to sterilize a planet." The chamber erupted in gasps and panicked conversations. 247 ships was larger than many species' entire military forces. "Impossible," the Korath representative snarled. "Humans had only 12 ships 3 months ago." "You counted the ships we allowed you to see," Karen replied. "Did you really think we would show you our true strength while you were oppressing us?" Dr. Korvash leaned forward. "Admiral, if you wanted to conquer the galaxy, why did you wait so long?" "Because we hoped for peace," Karen answered. "For 2 centuries we tried diplomacy. We followed your laws, respected your authority, and begged for basic fairness. You responded with mockery and cruelty." The human admiral paused, and her expression grew darker. "Then you murdered 3,000 innocent civilians on Kepler 442b. You laughed while children died. That was the moment you chose war instead of peace." Minister Blue tried to regain control of the situation. "Admiral, surely we can negotiate a solution. The Council is prepared to discuss new trade agreements and expanded human rights." Karen's laughter was cold and bitter. "New trade agreements? Expanded rights? You had 2 centuries to offer those things. Instead, you treated us like insects." You withheld medical treatments that could have saved billions of human lives. You found our pain amusing. She leaned forward, staring directly at Minister Blue. The time for negotiation ended when your people laughed at genocide. Now you get to experience what humans do when diplomacy fails. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Fleet Admiral Karen White stood on the bridge of the UES Nemesis, the largest warship humanity had ever built. Around her, 200 other Earth vessels waited in hyperspace, ready to emerge anywhere in the galaxy within minutes. "Admiral, all task forces report ready," announced her operations officer, Commander Paul Morgan. Paul was 38 years old and had spent half his life training for this moment. "Excellent. Begin Operation Righteous Fury." Across the galaxy, human battle groups dropped out of hyperspace like wolves descending on sheep. The Altarian Empire faced 12 human ships that appeared without warning above their capital world. The Rigelian Federation found 15 Earth vessels surrounding their main military base. Even minor council species discovered human warships in their home systems. But the largest force appeared at Vega Prime, where the combined fleets of 6 major council species had gathered to make their stand against Earth. Admiral Tim Baker commanded the human force at Vega Prime. He was a quiet man who had studied alien military tactics for 30 years. His 12 ships faced over 1,000 alien vessels, but he showed no sign of concern. "Admiral, the alien fleet is demanding our surrender," reported his communications officer. "Put them on screen," Tim ordered. The face of Admiral Zex Thera, Supreme Commander of the Council Defense Force, appeared on the bridge. The alien looked like a giant octopus with armor plating and cybernetic implants. "Human Admiral, you face the combined might of 6 star empires. Surrender now and your crew will be treated as prisoners of war." Tim smiled politely. "Counteroffer, Admiral. You have 10 minutes to evacuate all non-essential personnel from your ships. After that, I cannot guarantee their safety." "You mock me with your arrogance," Zex Thera replied. 12 ships against 1,000. Your mathematics are poor. "My mathematics are perfect," Tim said quietly. "The question is whether you understand what you are really facing." The alien admiral cut the transmission and ordered his fleet to attack. 1,000 ships moved toward the human formation, their weapons charging for what should have been a massacre. The Battle of Vega Prime lasted 6 hours, but the outcome was decided in the first 6 minutes. Tim's ships moved like dancers, flowing between the alien vessels with impossible grace. Their weapons fired with precision that defied belief, striking specific systems instead of just trying to destroy everything. Where the aliens expected human ships to be slow and clumsy, they found vessels that moved faster than their sensors could track. The Council fleet had numbers, but the humans had technology that seemed like magic. Energy shields that adapted to every attack, weapons that fired through dimensions to bypass armor entirely, computer systems that predicted enemy movements before the aliens even decided what to do. Admiral Zex Thera watched his fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy that should have been helpless. His 1,000 ships were reduced to wreckage while the 12 human vessels remained completely undamaged. "How?" he whispered as his own ship's engines failed. "How is this possible?" The answer came from Dr. Tony Shaw, broadcasting from Earth. "You gave us 2 centuries to study your technology. Every trade mission, every diplomatic meeting, every cultural exchange was an opportunity to learn. We know your weaknesses better than you do." Tony appeared on screens throughout the galaxy, addressing not just the military commanders but entire populations. "You thought we were primitive because our ships looked simple. You thought we were weak because we avoided conflict. You thought we were stupid because we asked questions instead of giving orders." His image shifted to show massive construction facilities hidden throughout Earth's solar system, shipyards in the asteroid belt, weapons testing ranges on distant moons, training centers where human soldiers learned to fight in zero gravity. While you were laughing at us in your council chambers, we were building the most advanced military force in the galaxy. Every insult you gave us made us stronger. Every act of cruelty motivated us to work harder. The images changed again, showing human ships appearing over dozens of worlds. Not just military targets, but the home planets of every species that had oppressed Earth. "You wanted to keep us in our place," Tony continued. "You wanted us to remain weak and grateful for whatever scraps you threw us. You forgot that oppression does not create submission. It creates determination." President Helen Carter joined the broadcast from her office in Washington. Behind her, the lights of Earth's cities glowed in the darkness. but now they seemed more like the eyes of a predator than the glow of a peaceful world. "Citizens of the galaxy," Helen said, her voice carrying to every inhabited world. "For 2 centuries Earth sought peace. We followed your laws, respected your authority, and tried to earn our place through cooperation and hard work." She paused, and her expression hardened. "You responded by treating us like animals. You withheld life-saving medicine from our children. You stole worlds that we discovered. You murdered our colonists and then laughed about it in your council chambers." The broadcast shifted to show recordings from the council session, where the aliens had laughed at the New Haven massacre. The sounds of alien amusement at human suffering echoed across the galaxy. "That laughter was recorded and broadcast to every human settlement," Helen continued. "Our people heard you celebrating the deaths of their friends and family members. That was the moment Earth decided that peace was no longer possible." The images changed one final time, showing the orbital defense platforms around Earth. What the galaxy had thought were communication arrays and research stations were revealed as massive. Commander Paul Morgan stood in the docking bay of the council station, watching his Marines secure the massive structure that had served as the galaxy's seat of power for over 3,000 years. The aliens who had once ruled from these halls now cowered in detention areas, waiting to learn their fate. The assault on the council station had taken exactly 57 minutes. Paul's force of 200 human soldiers had overwhelmed security systems, designed to protect against entire fleets. The aliens had built their defenses to stop ships and energy weapons, but they had never considered that humans might simply walk inside and take control. "All sectors secure." "Commander," reported Sergeant Lisa Adams over the radio, "we have rounded up all council delegates and station personnel. No casualties on our side." Paul nodded with satisfaction. The operation had been planned down to the smallest detail. Every corridor, every security checkpoint, every escape route had been mapped and studied. The humans knew the council station better than the aliens who lived there. "Excellent work, Sergeant. Prepare the main chamber for President Carter's arrival." An hour later, President Helen Carter walked into the same council chamber where Jake Morrison had been humiliated just 8 months earlier. But now the situation was completely reversed. Where aliens had once sat in judgment of humanity, they now knelt on the floor under guard by human Marines. Helen took her place at the central podium, where council leaders had made their decisions for millennia. The symbolism was not lost on anyone present. The species that had been considered too primitive for equal treatment now controlled the destiny of the galaxy. "Citizens of the council species," Helen began, her voice echoing through chambers that were being broadcast to every inhabited world. "8 months ago, your delegates laughed in this room while our children died. Today, you kneel before the species you called insects." Minister Blue, still wearing his golden robes but now with his hands bound behind his back, looked up at the human president. "What will you do with us?" he asked quietly. "That depends entirely on you," Helen replied. "Earth offers membership in a new galactic government to any species willing to accept basic principles of equality and justice." She gestured to Admiral Karen White, who stepped forward carrying a document. "The Terran Federation Charter establishes simple rules for galactic civilization. No species is superior to another. All have the right to explore, colonize, and trade freely. Any act of genocide or systematic oppression will be met with immediate intervention." Dr. Korvash, the Centauri scientist, raised his head from where he knelt on the floor. "And if we refuse?" Admiral White answered with cold precision. "Then you remain under permanent military occupation until you change your minds. Earth has 247 warships positioned throughout your territories. We can maintain this occupation indefinitely." The message was clear. Cooperation was encouraged. But submission was not optional. General Nathan Brooks established military governors on 37 key worlds within the first month of occupation. But human rule was unlike anything the galaxy had experienced before. Instead of exploitation and oppression, the humans focused on reconstruction and reform. On Zephyr Prime, Governor Mark Taylor worked with local leaders to establish new laws protecting the rights of minority species. The Zephyrian Empire had enslaved 12 different alien races for centuries, treating them as property rather than people. "Your empire ends today," Mark told the former Zephyrian leadership. "But your species has a choice. You can join the Federation as equals, or you can remain prisoners of your own hatred." Many Zephyrians chose cooperation, especially the younger generation who had grown tired of their empire's cruelty. The former slaves were given citizenship, education, and the right to self-governance. For the first time in centuries, Zephyr Prime became a world where different species lived together in peace. The Korath homeworld required more direct intervention. Admiral Susan Grant personally oversaw the dismantling of their military infrastructure, ensuring that the species responsible for the New Haven massacre could never again threaten innocent civilians. "Your government made a choice when it murdered our people," Susan told the Korath leadership. "Now you live with the consequences of that choice." But even with the Korath, humans showed more mercy than the aliens had ever shown to others. Korath civilians were protected, their basic needs were met, and their children were given access to education that taught cooperation instead of conquest. Dr. Amy Turner led the most important change of all, the medical revolution that swept across the galaxy. Within 6 months, every inhabited world had access to the medical technologies that the Council species had hoarded for centuries. Amy established medical centers on hundreds of worlds, staffed by both human doctors and alien physicians who wanted to help rather than exploit. Diseases that had killed billions of people over the centuries were eradicated in a matter of months. "Medicine is not a weapon to be used against your enemies," Amy announced during a galaxy-wide broadcast. "It is a tool for saving lives regardless of what species those lives belong to." The change was revolutionary. Species that had spent millennia dying from preventable diseases suddenly found their populations growing and thriving. The gratitude was overwhelming, especially from the smaller species that the Council had always ignored. Captain Lisa Hayes, now promoted to Admiral, commanded the Terran Space Navy's exploration fleets as they pushed into uncharted regions of the galaxy. No longer restricted by Council limitations, human ships established colonies on hundreds of new worlds. But these colonies were different from the old Council settlements. Humans invited other species to join them, creating multicultural communities where different beings worked together for common goals. The rigid species hierarchies that had dominated galactic civilization for thousands of years began to crumble. "We are not building an empire," Lisa told her officers during a planning meeting. "We are building a civilization where everyone has a chance to succeed." The results spoke for themselves. Human colonies became the most prosperous and peaceful settlements in the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for centuries learned to live and work together under human guidance. Ambassador Jake Morrison returned to the Council chambers, but this time he sat at the head of the assembly. The new Galactic Federation held its sessions in the same building where humans had once been humiliated, but the atmosphere was completely different. "The first order of business," Jake announced to the assembled delegates, "is the establishment of the Universal Rights Charter. Every sentient being in the galaxy will have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The alien delegates who had once laughed at human proposals now listened carefully to every word. They had learned that humans were serious about their principles, and that opposition carried serious consequences. The Altarian delegate, his spider-like form trembling slightly, raised one of his legs to speak. "Ambassador Morrison, what assurance do we have that Earth will not become as oppressive as the old Council?" Jake smiled, remembering the fear and hatred he had felt in this same room just a year earlier. "You have the assurance that comes from knowing our character. We could have destroyed your worlds and enslaved your people. Instead, we chose to rebuild and reform." He gestured to the mixed crowd of human and alien observers in the gallery. "Look around you. This chamber now represents all species equally. Your voices are heard, your votes count, and your rights are protected." The transformation was remarkable. Within 2 years, the galaxy that had been dominated by a few powerful species became a diverse community, where even the smallest civilizations had a voice in their own destiny. But the most important change was in the historical records. The final entry in the old Council archives was written by historian Vel Tana, the last official chronicler of the Zephyrian Empire. "We thought them weak because they sought peace," she wrote in the flowing script of her people. "We thought them ignorant because they asked questions instead of giving orders. We thought them inferior because they showed mercy to enemies who showed them none." Her words were transmitted to every world in the galaxy, becoming the official end of one era and the beginning of another. "We were wrong about everything. When humanity's wrath finally darkened our heavens, our insight came far too late. The entry continued. The humans could have become conquerors like us. They had the power to enslave entire species and strip worlds bare. Instead, they chose to become something we had never imagined. Liberators who freed us from our own cruelty. Veltana concluded with words that became the motto of the new galactic age. The galaxy learned that there is nothing more dangerous than a peaceful species pushed beyond its breaking point. But we also learned that there is nothing more merciful than a powerful species that chooses justice over revenge. President Carter stood in her office on Earth, looking out at the stars that once seemed so distant and hostile. The galaxy that had rejected humanity now looked to Earth for leadership and guidance. Was it worth it? Asked General Brooks, who had come to deliver the final military reports. Helen considered the question carefully. The war had lasted 8 months, though the outcome had been decided much sooner. Alien casualties had